All right, well, welcome to our first education committee with our new board members. Just as a recap, the education committee focuses primarily on educational programs, curriculum, developments that are moving forward with pieces of the strategic design, mostly related to the educational process of things. So we often have things like updates, how current initiatives and programs are moving forward. Today, that's why David Frazier is here to give a quarterly update on MTSSB, which is multi-tiered systems of support for behavior. We also have things like athletics and activities, which fall under giving updates and reports and covering new initiatives. So today, Heather Lindstad is here to present on that. Some past topics have been professional learning communities and looking at how those support and are supported by the educational process. We've done some pieces on the NEASC accreditation process, and I think that will come up in the future again. New types of instructional approaches often start at this committee. We'll probably do some testing and data updates in the early summertime and discuss, measures to implement going forward for that. So this committee is, my opinion, the most exciting one because it doesn't focus so much around budgets and dollars and cents and buildings and bricks. It's more about the kids and the teachers and the programs that are supporting learning and how we can continue to improve learning and things like that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, who's gonna, do you want me to lead this or?
Typically, Marcia was the board chair, the committee chairperson, so she always started it and then ran through the agenda. I just sort of am her liaison.
Okay.
So I guess I'm your liaison now.
All right, so let's just go through the agenda then. So learning changes to the agenda.
Yes, MTSB is going first.
All right, let's settle that. Okay. So the next item on the agenda is MTSSB. Go for it, David.
All right. So as David had stated earlier, the MTSSB stands for multi-tiered systems of support for behavioral and health and well-being. It's very much similar to the academic MTSS, which is the multi-tiered systems of support for academics. Essentially what we do is we take a look at 3 tiers, tier 1 being universal for all learners. And so when we take a look at the MTSSB piece is what supports and services do we have for the tier 1 that all learners in the school can access at any given time. We then take a look at a smaller group of learners that need just a little bit more than the basic supports that we provide. So we focus that on a tier 2 level. And then we have learners in a very smaller clump of cohorts who require intensive supports and services. And that is more of our tier 3 level of support. So in our district at the moment, we have an RMS group of tier 1 and tier 2, 3 teams. And so they're on the board with our team members. We have Jen Booth, who is our team lead for tier 1, and James Gallagher is our team lead for tier 2, 3. You can see that we have pretty good cross representation of general education, related services, special educators, administrators, and behavioral specialists all the way up through. And then at JGS, we have our team lead, Ashley Flamino, for tier 1, and Caitlin Chisholm is our team lead for tier 2, 3. And again, we have a wide variety of representations from general ed to special ed to media specialists and administration as well. We do not currently have anything at the middle school, high school. We've had the conversation in prior meetings where the NEASC process has been the primary focus for the middle school, high school. Adding all of this on top of that would just be overwhelming. And it wasn't really at the right moment. However, we've had ongoing conversations throughout the school year about the MTSSB process, and there are things already in place here at the middle school, high school. We are just going to launch that off at the beginning of the school year next year.
Launch off this for the high school?
Yeah, so we'll develop the teams and put them together for tier 1, tier 2, 3 for the middle school, high school next year,
Okay.
as opposed to trying to do it all this year on top of the NEASC pieces and rolling out all the other pieces. So one of the things that we kind of focused on was the attendance in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. So this graph here shows you that in the 2018-19 school year, which is our green line, that was before any pandemic. That was the year before the pandemic occurred. And then that 2019-20 is when we ended up launching into the pandemic. That spike that you see in January is that anomaly of RMS when we were hit with the stomach bug and the flu, and pretty much all the staff and the learners were out. And so that's what the spike was. But really March of that yellow line is when we went to remote learning. And then that red line is last school year when we were remote, in-person, remote, in-person. We saw a significant increase in truancy and absences. And we are now riding along that blue line, which we are closer back to that green line before the pandemic. We're still seeing some residuals, but again, some of it is lingering COVID cases and just learners trying to settle back into a in-person learning environment. It's nice to see that we have some trends, January, March, and May is when you see some peaks of absences, partially because the dips in December and February and April, we have a week out of school because of vacations. So that takes away the overall total of kids that may potentially be out. But it helps us see those trends and be able to focus on what supports and services could we potentially put in place so we can see some reduction of those spikes as we move forward in the future years. So this is just the attendance overall numbers for the last few years. Again, that 2018-19 is pre-pandemic year. And then last year was that super spike. And this year we are pretty close to where we were before we had any illness and transition to remote learning because of the pandemic. So it's nice to see that we're settling back down into ranges beforehand. So one of the things that we also want to focus on is the out-of-district placements, what we're seeing with trends with social emotional learning and behavioral health and well-being. Trends across the state, across the nation indicate increase in social emotional and significant behavioral issues, which impede any learner's ability to access their education. Because of the lack of in-district programming that we have here and the lack of staff to support those learners, increasing the need to consider out-of-district placement. Out-of-district placements cost anywhere between $150,000 to $500,000 per child per school year. So our overall goal is to build our MTSSB supports and services, to provide those here and within the district to reduce the number of escalating behaviors or social emotional needs and try to keep our kids here in the district so that we're not spending out up to $500,000 per child per school year. So I have been in contact with, based off of recommendation from our last education committee where we're looking at broadening out and connecting with some other districts. I've been in contact with Hillsborough, Deering, Conval, Milford, and Franklin, who all are somewhere in the process of MTSSB as well. Some of the successes that they've had is developing their own curriculum based on a couple of the evidence-based curriculums that they have evaluated. They felt that some of them didn't really meet the needs or a specific fit, but when they combined different curriculums together, they were able to develop their own and develop their own resources. So they were having some success with that. They have used early release PD time for planning and revision of curriculum material and just reviewing information and data along the way. They've adopted the Swiss program, which is, and they have used the Web to School, and we currently use Web to School for our student information system and They feel that that was a better transition. There was more support and tech support around the Swiss program. They were able to manipulate and utilize the data in different ways than what they could do in web to school. And I know that's something that we've discussed about, transitioning from web to school and looking at other potential student information systems and behavior data collection. One of the things that they have success with is reshaping the language, such as skill building and readiness versus the social emotional learning. Social emotional learning sometimes is confusing for parents and for learners. And then when you hear social emotional, that tends to be that negative stigma on that. And people feel that we kind of get stuck at a standstill, whereas skill building and readiness are languages that promote progress moving forward and growth. And then the ongoing PD or consultants that come into the district regularly is something that they have been working with. And they find that that's been beneficial and successful in supporting their process of MTSSB throughout the school year. Some of the, actually, before I go into that one, some of the things that we've been really successful with here in our district is our teams meet regularly, monthly, if not monthly, at least every other month. And we definitely have the every other month is with the full team, with the administrators to review information. And then our teams separate off and do their independent meetings once or twice a month. So they're reviewing information, they've been reviewing curriculum as well right along the way. We have focused topics are developed for our meetings. So we are looking at specific criteria that we're going to be focusing on for those meetings. And then we work on those pieces for the month. And then we come back together that next month and we figure out what we've learned, where are we in this process. We look at the positives and the negatives, if there's any trends in the data that we're reviewing. Our teams are very engaged and invested in the process. They have taken on a lot of the leadership on their own and have decided we need to meet outside of our already scheduled meetings, and which is great. And that's what we want to definitely see for each of those team members, having some of that part and taking that over and showing some in-district leadership for that. So those are the positive and successes that we've had here in this district. Moving on to the challenges and communicating with some of the administrators over there, different districts, they're in different places of the process and their process isn't really focused. So when you look at the MTSSB implementation guidelines, there's no set checklist like you have to go step 1, step 2, step 3, and 4. You can really pick and choose where you want to go. As a result of that, they've kind of lost focus on what the full direction that they're going in. And so it can be kind of with that kind of pick and choose your own adventure, it's very easy to get off topic and lose where you're going, your overall goal is. There's a lack of staff buy-in in some of the districts, so they're really struggling with the implementation piece of it. Even getting staff to understand what MTSSB is and the benefits of it. They have developed their own lessons and it's taking a little bit longer than anticipated based on specific learner needs. So that was something that they had shared, which is good information for us as a district who's just starting this process to say, okay, maybe we need to have a little bit more realistic expectations on specific lessons that may take a little bit longer based on where our learners are. Their district team meetings are challenged by teacher contracts. There's not enough time in the day for them to meet, and because of their contracts, it doesn't allow much time for them to meet after school or before school. They're really tight in that section, and just the language that's within their contracts kind of sets them up for major challenges to roll these pieces out. Universal screeners is something that is a benefit. It helps us identify areas of social, emotional, and behavioral issues. However, there is a yearly subscription, and the districts who utilize those say that it is a pretty big cost for the yearly subscription. And then another challenge that they are struggling with is their district community level team. And so that district community level team is district administrators, building administrators, community members that come together that help take a look at information at the district level, the big picture level, and disseminate information and then make decisions for the district and push that down through the different teams. They're lacking engagement from team members, so the attendance is low. Their families are not engaging in the team as well, because we try to get the family engagement and participation in that as well. And the efficacy of their current structure is not great. We are struggling in that DCLT as well. We decided this year that we were going to try to start small. So it's just community members, building administrators, and district administrators. And that we were going to kind of get our bearings on how that was going to work before we brought in family, and really think strategically, how are we going to engage parents, and really think about what parents we want engaged in the process. Because of low attendance, we've had to restructure. And so I think we're at the point now where we're going to be using some of our leadership team meetings to look at some information and make decisions. And then as we progress through this year and through next year, we'll take a look at how we can pull our community partners back in on things that pertain to them so that they have feedback. However, the communication piece is super important, especially for me to make sure that they're all still in the loop. So anything that happens or occurs within the school level or the district level, they are also getting that information. Even though they may not be part of that particular meeting, they're still getting the results of that meeting so that they know what's going on there in the loop. So at any time that we need to pull them in, they're already up to date. We don't have to spend time bringing them up to date and informing them of what's going on. So that's extremely important that we continue to keep that transparency and communication going. And they appreciate that. So some of the other challenges we've had here is just really the overall time frame of trying to get the middle school and high school up and running because of the NEASC process. Again, we don't want to overwhelm that, because that is a super important process, and what they are going to go through will be data in itself that we can use as the MTSSB process as we look at identifiers and areas that we can help support and build on. Through my conversations with other districts, there is a shared interest in kind of building a community of resources and looking at some training. So we've been communicating with the Department of Education, and I meet with the Department of Education every week with a consultant who works with our district and our region. And so the Department of Education, starting in May, is going to be putting together a community of practice, which they will invite district administrators for MTSSB to join them. And that's where we can share out our concerns, our successes. If there's an area that we want some training in, they'll give us an opportunity to have the state provide some of the training and maybe pull some resources together to try to save some money so that we're not shelling out full cost, but maybe some shared costs. So those are things that we are I kind of pulled together some different districts to get to see if we can kind of work together in a consortium and save ourselves some money all around. And the Department of Education is very responsive to that. So I appreciate their understanding on that piece. So our timeline for this school year, in regards to what we've been working on since January, is pretty much we're right in that darker area right now. In April, we're continuing to evaluate our social emotional curriculum programs using the Hexagon tool. The Hexagon tool is a vetted tool to evaluate the program's fit, need, if it's usability, if it's efficient or effective, if it can be done with fidelity. It also looks at to see if programs have ongoing professional development for our staff, rather than here's a one-off and doing half of it, and then coming in and hoping that it all falls into place. We're really looking for programs that are going to be able to support, here's the initial training, and then once we've got that under our belts, here's some additional support, follow-up trainings to help us make sure that we're providing those supports and services and implementing those programs with fidelity. So our tier 1 through 3 teams have been playing around with the HEX tool to get themselves familiar with it. They are now embedded into the actual evaluating of SEL curriculum. We are going to be meeting in May, combining both RMS and JGS to share out what they have been working on, and they've already been doing some collaboration together in regards to that. What we'll do in May is we'll have that kind of decision of what we want to go with for a program, which will be then shared out with the JGS staff and the RMS staff to take a look at to get their feedback. And then in June, we're hoping that we'll be able to share out with the full school staff and administration and here at this board what program they would like to move forward with for future. Once we have that information, we can begin to do some of the summer work and planning around that piece. And then when we come in the fall with the new staff that we will be hiring or hope to hire, we'll bring them back and bring them into speed and as part of their onboarding process and let them know where we are. And then we can begin having the conversations on how that works out into the budget process for the following school year. So that's kind of where we're leaning towards right now. We're looking at trying to find ways that we can expedite some of this process and help support with funding some pieces, as it's always important. So that's kind of where we are with that. With our 5-year plan, we kind of take a look at where we want to be globally. And this is what we have been working on for this school year. So our goal was to establish and work on gathering behavioral and mental health data. And our tier 1 teams have been working on that using our educator's handbook for the disciplinary pieces, web to school for attendance pieces as well. Each school counselor at the elementary school uses a different program for their school counseling tracking information. So part of one of the things that we've identified is we're trying to create common language and consistency between Jaffrey and Jaffrey Grade School and Ringe Memorial School. Yes, we have 2 different towns and they're 2 different demographics, but we want to make sure that we're streamlining so it's kind of like one school. So when those 2 schools feed up here, the staff up here aren't trying to deal with RMS language and JGS language and then try to embed it into JRMS language. So we want to try to make it more streamlined and consistent across the district. We have established a tier 2-3 team, and they are exploring the current systems to identify areas and needs to be modified. Again, we've looked at the educator's handbook, and one of the things that the tier 2-3 team have decided is trying to figure out more common language to use in the educator's handbook between both RMS and JGS, and really clarifying and cleaning up some of the categories that some of the behaviors are listed under. That way, we're looking at it, smaller chunks versus, we've got 15 behaviors, but there's 15 different categories. And so kind of clumping them together. School staff attend the established MTSSB meetings. We've had the calendar scheduled since before the school year started. So it's already regularly set. So RMS generally meets on the 2nd or 3rd Tuesdays, and then JGS meets on the 3rd Thursdays of the month. And those are already booked for the whole calendar year. So we have those in ours. And if there's anything that they want to do beyond that, they schedule those anywhere within their calendar time. So we've established that tier level 1 coach for each building. So the team leads, those team leads, when we are not in the full team meeting, they are running their own team meetings. They are developing some goals for the team to focus on. They are reporting back to me and the building administrators on what they've been working on, and there's different documents that are going back and forth that we can look at and provide some feedback and input on. and they're receiving some of the training to take on that leadership role. So eventually that they'll become that point person that if we have a kiddo that the teachers feel like it should be on a tier 2, 3, they'll go to that point person team lead and say, here's a recommendation, here's the information that they need, or here's the information that we're providing, and they'll take that lead on that piece. So, we've conducted and analyzed the district MFI, and the district MFI is the fidelity inventory. Not only have we done the inventory for the whole district, but we've done one for each of the elementary schools as well. And that gets done generally within the first half of the year. It can be done at the second half of the year, but generally it's, you may not see a whole lot of progress within the first year of implementation, which is where we are right now, because we're just identifying things and evaluating. But it may be done at least twice a year in years moving forward. So our goal is, we've already done it this year. We'll conduct it again in the fall, and then take a look at the results from last year compared to the fall for this year, and what growths we've made and what areas that we still need to focus on. This MFI is done at the Department of Education level. So we have the consultant from the DOE. Once we have completed this MFI, it gets sent to the DOE, they generate a report, and that report gets sent back to us for review. We've also taken a look at revising our behavior tracking practices and procedures and systems. So a couple pieces of that is, we've kind of revised the truancy process. Since last year with the COVID, we had an exuberant amount of truancy cases, and I think I was in several meetings a day all school year long. It was an exhaustive process, but it pretty much shifted. It's not a punitive process. We really are looking at trying to engage parents in that truancy process in the meeting, and helping it develop plans for their learners. My philosophy is teamwork. If we make it a punitive process for parents who may already have a negative feel about school and have already had a negative experience themselves, it just pushes them away, and it separates and severs that relationship. My goal is to continue to build and repair those relationships. So as long as they're engaged with school and developing the plans and helping follow through with those plans, that does not fall under educational neglect, which then limits the amount of CHIN's petitions or reports to DCYF for educational neglect that we have to move forward with. Last year, out of all of the cases that we had, and I think it was over 200, we moved forward with 1 CHIN's petition. This year, we're at 0 so far. So it's nice to see that the parents are engaging with the meetings, and the feedback that we've been getting from parents, it's been a positive process. So we'll continue to keep that revised and making progress on those. The other piece too is just cleaning up our categories in our educators handbook, and making sure that those categories make sense, and there's not 1,500 different categories, but we're combining some of those categories to make it a lot easier to use. We're providing staff with training. Again, I meet with the Department of Education weekly, and whatever input and training I get from them is what I pass along to our team leaders, as well as the whole team in general. We've been looking a lot at the ABC data for a lot of our learners with behavioral needs, and the ABC is the antecedent, behavior, and consequence. So what happens right before behavior, what types of behaviors are displayed, and what are the consequences right after that behavior is displayed. And as we take that data, we take a look at, are we finding patterns and trends? Is there certain times of day that these things are happening? How often are they happening? How many of the specific behaviors are occurring? And that helps us guide to determine what kind of program or shifts in programming we need to do for our learners with intense behavioral needs. And then the crisis intervention training, all this past summer, we trained all of the building administrators and district administrators, so they are fully certified in the CPI intervention and the verbal de-escalation, the disengagement skill, and the physical intervention or restraints. Throughout the school year, I have trained associates who work specifically with some of our learners with intense behavioral needs. And so they are fully trained in that as well. And then there are some case managers of those learners who have received the training as well. As we move forward in our 5-year plan, our goal is to take that CPI and train all classroom teachers district-wide in at least the verbal de-escalation process. And so they'll get some of that, and we've stopped clicking. So we'll get some of that across the board for teachers. And I know through conversation with teachers, they've been asking for some of that training so that they understand. And that helps the classroom teachers know where the associates are when they're working with learners and why they're doing certain things. They'll have that training to be able to support and at least understand where they're going with it. Another piece that we've been working on is identifying and establishing how we evaluate the MTSSB supports for behavior. So we've been looking at a community resource map, and that really we had a subcommittee that worked hard on finding all the different community partnerships, all the contact information, what they do for our community, what supports and services they provide. And so that's all located on one document. As we continue to clean that up, that is something that we'll be working on and eventually get posted on our district website. So as families, if learners, if their children have things that pop up and they need some resources, they'll be able to go to our district website and say, I need some help on resources and mental health. I need some resources on after school programs. I need some resources on community doctors or whatever. There'll be a place for them to come in and take a look at that through our district website or through other social media. But it'll be a nice located place for all those resources. We continue to conduct the MFIs, looking for fidelity. We're going to be working on the professional development plan for training and coaching for support, identifying ongoing coaching activities in the district and school levels. So those are things that we're looking at for next year. And we'll be doing some summer work around that. And then the evaluation plan for collecting and analyzing data. We've made some, again, the ABC data collection sheets have been put together. We've come up with quarterly reporting for information to be put in for each team. As they're working on information, they can house their team meetings, anything that they've been focusing on, the next steps. So it's all nice in one area, and we can just go refer to that really quickly. We look at the MFI evaluation from the reports that we get back generated from the Department of Education. So those are all pieces that we are looking at. We also look at student grades. We pull attendance and educators handbook for disciplinary pieces as well. And those are things that we look at as far as the student outcome and measuring progress and monitoring pieces. Mobilizing our school staff. Again, we've identified existing school teams. So we have our full teams of tier 1 and tier 2, 3 at both elementary schools. We'll be jumping into it next year here at the middle school, high school. With those teams, we've already established our process. So what our norms are for these meetings, confidentiality, because we are dealing with students who may receive outside supports and services or may have some trauma, and that information gets fed to us through that process. And we want to make sure that we are maintaining confidentiality for that learner. So that is a big piece, and we've developed some guidelines around that. Each person has a different role within that team. So whether we have a team leader or we have one person who's going and getting the data, another person is sending out surveys. So they've established what their responsibilities are on those teams. We have agendas at every meeting, and those are already, there's a template. And so they just continue to add on to that document for each meeting. So it's all nicely stored in one area. And then during those meetings, we do a lot of problem solving. We take a look at the data, we make some decisions, and we've developed a system to reduce any influences. Sometimes we can have somebody in a room, and when they make a decision, we kind of all follow along with that. So we've developed a process where we just use number cards or colored cards, and we just count to 3, and then we hold up a card, and whatever that is, and it allows opportunity for us to have discussion. You know, why did you rate it as a number 2 versus you rated it as a number 4? And it allows that discussion piece to happen, and you get better results with that process. And then we're working on developing our MOUs with our partners agencies to support the MTSSB process. And that's something that we're continuing to work with. And we've had a couple that go back and forth just with the language and trying to, again, bridge and build our relationships with community partners. Sometimes this has been a little bit hard because there's longer wait time to get into some of the supports and services outside of the school. But we continue to work on those. And then this is our tier 1, which is pretty much what I just went right through. This is what we're working on. So we've accomplished everything on here. So we're making some really great progress on all of our year 1 goals. For our tier 2, we've accomplished all of these goals as well.
Accomplish them in the grade schools.
Yep, to grade school, yep.
Yeah.
So we've been pushing a lot this year and really making sure that we're utilizing our time the best that we can. Again, the teams have been meeting on their own outside of our regularly scheduled time because they are definitely invested and engaged in this process and want to make forward movement with it, which is excellent. So our future work is we're going to continue to evaluate our social emotional learning curriculums using that HEX tool. Next month, we're going to be meeting with both RMS and JGS tier teams to share out the results, present it to the school staff for feedback, identify areas of professional development needed for piloting a program. So if we choose a program, and I'm just going to use the second step as one that's just right off the top of my head, if that's a program that they decide that we want to move forward with, then we'll start looking at what do we need for professional development to get started with a piloting program. Who's going to be piloting it? Where are they at with their knowledge base on second step? And then what do they need to really roll that out? And then our tier 2-3 team is beginning to evaluate the tier 2 interventions using the same hexagon tool. They're working on developing communication protocols and expectations. So how do we communicate with parents for learners that are tier 2-3? How do we do it internally with our teams? And then how do we connect with our partnerships outside of the school? So what's that connection and how does that communication go back and forth? One of the things we talked about is, we may refer out to an outside counselor and we want to make sure that they're really making a connection. So are we just saying we have a family who we're recommending, and then where's that follow-up? Did the family make connections? Connect with the family. Did you make connection with this? And how can we help you make sure that you two are making those connections outside of school so the learner is getting what they need? So they're working on those guidelines in our community partners. For grant work, right now we are connected with Connected Families New Hampshire's expansion grant. Right now, our MTSSB team members are paid by the grant as teacher consultants. This will end on June 31st of this school year. I do have a meeting next month to discuss what next year will look like. One of the things that we really need to consider as a district is this is not a sustainable way of supporting our team. Like, we can't pay them what they're making as teacher consultants through the grant. So we've got to figure out as we go through the budget process how we're going to transfer this into a sustainable way that we can continue to budget for those stipends. So we are looking at a phasing process possibly with this grant. But again, I'll have more information by the end of the school year on where they plan on going with this and what we can do with that. We have applied for the social emotional learning in action grant. The application is pending review. I'm hoping we'll hear before the end of this month or end of May. We have requested $30,000 for the district, and that is the cap that they have for the grant. Our number one goal is to continue developing and expanding tier 1 SEL supports and programs that will address these areas here, with our goal to reduce behavioral office referrals, increase our attendance, and bolster academic achievement. And again, this is a district-wide. The team that filled out this application, it was myself, Kim Baker, who's our school director of school counseling here, Nikki Fraley, and Ashley Flamino. Our focus was tier 1, because if we focus on tier 2, tier 3, we're afraid we may live in tier 2, tier 3, and we want to not be there. We want to focus and live more on the tier 1 and provide as much support and services for our tier 1 to prevent the larger numbers getting up to tier 2, 3. Another goal that we're looking at is engaging parents and community members in meaningful ways to assist with this process. So providing some information to parents. We've been listening to some of the comments and conversations that they've been expressing. They don't know what to do. There's so much mental health out there. I don't know how to help my child who's in mental health crisis. There's a lot of these pronouns. I don't understand the pronouns. What does this mean? What does the LGBTQIA mean? So we're looking at trying to get some information for parents to help them with those questions and those areas that they're looking for information on, and some racial issues as well. So we can bring those parents into here or meet them outside wherever, thinking outside the box, different creative ways that we can engage parents and get them the information that would help them understand where their child is at in regards to mental health or LGBTQIA or racial issues. We're also looking at addressing inequities and hardships within our community, so that school, because that directly impacts our learners here at school. So what resources do we have available for those who are experiencing economic hardships or who have learners with significant disabilities, and how do we get them the supports and services either for transitional services or even having them engage within their own community here within the Jeffrey Range School and towns. So this is primarily focusing on parents. With the focus on the parents, we're hoping that that will then increase the support for learners. And then we're looking at increasing professional development for staff to ensure fidelity and sustainability, as well as onboarding for new hires. So we've set aside, or have kind of ear tagged, a large chunk of that money that will be able to either send people out for professional development, have people come in for professional development, and then those ongoing PLCs throughout the school year, and utilizing grant funds to support and fund those professional developments rather than taxing through the general budget. There's also a Bright Futures grant. That application opens up in June. We have already established some teams that are already looking at what the previous application requirements were. And so we're getting a sense of what those expectations are, and we're starting to generate ideas. So when that application opens, we can jump on it, move forward with it, and get it done and in. And in talking with the Department of Education, they said that the awards are going to go to districts who have not received awards before. And we have not ever received rewards from this program grant. So that's a positive. So that's another thing that we'll be working towards as well. And again, hoping that those will continue to support and fund some of our programs and tier 1 services. And that's where we are.
So in May, you're going to start being able to share some of the data analysis that you've done.
Yes.
When would you anticipate that that's going to be available in this committee?
In June.
in June.
Yep. So they will come together in May to share out what they have worked on, what they've come up with as a kind of a choice 1, 2, 3. They'll provide that to the school staff in May for them to take a look at and provide feedback back to the team. And then the team will come back and say, okay, this is our number 1 choice that we want to move forward with. And that's what we'll be able to report out in June.
As you move forward into October and you're looking at budget,
Mhm.
one of the things we're going to need is the data that supports the investment. And the pieces like that, like where are we right now? What analysis have we done? Where are we at? What are our shortcomings? What do we need to focus on? And then what is it going to cost to do that? And then what is the end result going to be?
Yep.
So that we can measure it at the end of the year as well as the beginning in terms of funding.
Yeah, and one of the things that they're looking at within each program is, they're looking at the upfront cost for purchasing the program, but then what are the costs for the supporting professional development along the way, as well as kind of the whole packet. So we're hoping that we'll have all that number rolled out.
And it's also helpful if you can come along with a cost avoidance, which is saying if we do this, we're going to avoid these costs.
Mhm.
Questions?
I heard something a little bit about the Swiss and the web to school, because I know this school uses web to school right now. And then there's Otis still out there, yes or no? So is this then in place, Swiss would then be in place of web to school and Otis, like it's a different program?
So Otis is the learning management system. The web to school is the student information system.
Okay,
Swiss would replace or could potentially replace the
web to school.
web to school. However, the Department of Education had made some recommendations on an overall that all districts could use.
Uh-huh.
And so I think that was one of the things that Ruben was waiting to see what their recommendation was. And that means that as we enter in behavior data and attendance data, it all gets funneled.
Mm,
So we don't have to do separate reports for our beginning, mid, and end of year reports.
right.
And that was all coming out of the Department of Education. And I think they were going to make that decision or recommendation at the end of March, beginning of April.
Mhm.
I haven't been able to follow up on that piece yet because I think I'll be meeting with the DOE next week and seeing what that result was.
Mhm.
So that's just in the beginning discussions.
Yeah,
If we switch over, again, we want to make sure that we're evaluating whatever program we're looking at to make sure it fits our district and it's really going to meet our needs and really we can do what we need it to do.
right. I guess I was asking because it kind of went with, like you had said, there was a lack of buy-in. And so I was wondering, is the lack of buy-in due to the fact that things are constantly changing? Like, oh, we're gonna do this. Okay, now we're gonna do this. Then we're gonna do this. Then
No,
use this program. Now
The
this program.
districts, the other districts, their lack of buy-in are for different reasons. Part of it is contractual.
Okay.
They're bound with their contract. Some
Yeah.
of it is there's different philosophies throughout the districts.
Yeah.
There's one district where it's a priority for the SAU, but it's not a priority for certain buildings
Okay.
and certain building levels within that district. So that's where they're meeting their challenges. Here in this district, it is a priority, not only at the SAU level, but at each building level. So we're invested in moving forward with MTSSB. And so it's just a matter of when we move forward and looking at different programs to support for data collection and whatnot, we want to make sure that we're doing our due diligence and evaluating it and making sure it's a vetted program
Mhm.
before we just jump in.
Okay, and then with the grade schools already having it in place, is that something that they could help teach the middle high school, like use some people who are already within to help aid with, I don't even know if that would help with some money process or something, but help use people who already know it and do it. One, for buy-in as well, for them to be like, hey, listen, we're in the grade schools and we've done this and it's working really well. People that teachers here can relate with and be like, oh, well, we're getting these kids also.
There's buy-in up here already.
Yeah.
And there's already a lot of pieces of MTSSB in place.
used.
It's just not streamlined and systematized and
Okay.
organized underneath the framework of
Yeah.
MTSSB. Again, we weren't really putting this on to the middle school, high school this year because they're going through the NEAS process, and that NEAS results will actually help us with an MTSSB components and identifying areas of need. And we've been having conversations all along this entire school year about MTSSB. So it's not like we're going to start brand new with this middle school, high school, and that they're far behind the 8 ball. It's just a matter of, okay, we've been talking about it, now let's formally put it in place. So there's definitely buy-in, and people are aware of, what's going on and what the process will look like. We just need to get through the NEAS process.
And I know I'm just jumping in, so I don't know all the details or anything or what's been said in the past. In one of the slides, it said something about MTSSB is a choice, and that so you're bringing it to people as a choice. Were there other choices that you guys chose this because there were already other choices? Now we're at the end of this decision.
So there are other things like PBIS,
Yeah.
But that's program has been proven to be more geared towards elementary school, and really this lower elementary school. Once kids get up to 4th or 5th grade, they disengage from that program because it's very much reward based and token economy kind of stuff. And learners and by the time they get to middle school, it's like, that's so kiddie, and I'm not a kid anymore. Where MTSSB really is a framework that goes from pre-K through 12.
So you've looked at the choices, and now this is the final. Okay.
Yeah.
That's okay. Those were my questions.
Anything else?
Not for me.
Okay.
Thank you. Good presentation. Very informative.
Thank you. And we'll see you in June.
Yes. Great.
You gonna teach me how to use that thing?
You just use this arrow
Great.
when Nick sets you up.
Don't set me up for failure, Nick. All right. Okay, so we haven't met. I'm Heather Lindstedt. I'm the activities director for the district. I've met Kim before, and I know Charlie. So nice to meet you. State of activities and athletics. So kind of quick synopsis of just this year. I'll go back to a few things from previous years, but certainly there was a change in November with our athletic director retiring. So there's been obviously change, and nobody likes change, but since I've been here in 2019, I've never had a full year without COVID. So that's been very interesting in implementing new programming, not only for athletics, but also for clubs and activities. So that's always been something that we'll talk about. I don't think, as you'll see the numbers, that we're going to have any problems coming out of COVID and doing what we are, because we've really sustained our numbers because of diligence of, even when people were in remote, that we created clubs and activities. We kept our sports going. So we really haven't lost anything in our momentum for what we were trying to do. So similar to the photos just up there as we get started, something new, and that photo of the athletes was taken by the yearbook club. And something that you'll know about me, as I continue to say about student voice, is that's who it's supposed to be about. They're supposed to be getting the hands-on experience. So for our yearbook club to finally this year do for winter, do all the team photos and those kind of things and schedule that, was also a fun time for our student athletes, because they don't always get together. And people have talked about that. So creating opportunities for our student athletes to work with each other and those and then have students take the photos and those kind of things. To your right, that's our robotics, and they're out pounding the pavement there with the Rotary Club to make sure that they have some sponsors and get their voice out there. And that got us all the approval we needed for the grant for robotics. So they're basically we run our robotics basically on grants every year, and they're out there. I will tell you, as I'm going to move on, but there's the young lady there, and I know I'm not always supposed to use names, but try to tell you how activities in athletics, and I know everybody thought or thinks that they're so different. But the young lady in there used our opportunity because we are losing numbers in tennis. And so a couple of years ago in 2019, when I first started, we started a tennis club to see if we could boost our numbers as far as JRMS kids playing, doing the club thing after school, and developing the love of tennis or passion. So she's been doing that, and she's now a freshman. So I was on the court of our first game for the tennis. And again, I think we've talked about it, or you've seen things that our robotics team, even in its first year, placed in the state. And so I went up to her off the court, and I said, "Hey, Jess, congratulations, great match. You won your first match." And she looked at me and said, "Miss Lindstedt, that's not my first match win. You know I win at robotics too." And I think that that's what we have to understand about our students, that really they're going to find different passions. They could be a great athlete, or they could be doing robotics at the same time, and those kind of things. I think everybody always tends to believe that there's such great learning from being an athlete. There's also great learning in both taking on these clubs and going from there. So I think that hopefully will tell you kind of my ideas in what students are doing and what they should be doing, not only if they're an athlete, but if they're interested in other clubs and activities. So the why behind after school activities and kind of what I've based things on, but supplement and enrich regular academic programs of study. And again, we all know it, athletes tend to, and they should, and I don't have their grades, but we've done really well this year in front of me, but going to classes, you have to pass and those kind of things. For activities and whatnot, though, building off of what they're doing in class and allowing them to have kind of the hands-on experience. And I think that they're intertwined in what you're doing, and you should be learning it from making sure you're doing well academically, but taking on something and challenging yourself a little bit more after school than what maybe you're doing in the classroom. Provide the social opportunities for social development. This is a key word for me. When we talk about social development, it's always going to be about potential. And I think that we all have to sit there and think from K to 12, what is our students' potential? I think that there's times that we look at students and we kind of put them in pockets or silos and say, well, they don't have the potential. Potential is you just haven't done anything yet. And we're trying to create those opportunities that you can find your potential or your passion. We talk about it all the time that if you're not given the opportunity, then you have no idea. So we all have our potential, and the trust that our advisors can give our coaches that you have that potential. That is the biggest thing, is building that trust and creating the opportunities. So extension of the classroom, that again, teachers have come to me with different ideas for clubs and activities, or it's student designed. And we've had more success probably with the student design, which leads to student voice. My very first year, I still talk about them, but, and I just had 5 girls come to my office yesterday to design another club. And you would think that they were finished with clubs due to the fact that, school year is coming to an end, and they're not stopping. They've come up with an idea, and this is what they want. So the student voice, and we'll talk about it, and people will say, Heather, you started a Nintendo club. Well, our Nintendo club, and when we get to the numbers, from 3 seniors saying, oh, we want a Nintendo club, to now having Nintendo at JRMS, having it now going to CHS as esports, and I'll get a little more into it. But that is kind of the why, and I'll define those kind of things. And we all know it, safe environment. There are those that want to be here. It's safer to stay here longer at any school. It doesn't matter if it's JRCSD, RMS, here at the high school or at the middle school. That's where it's at. find their grit, I'm going to tell, most people will look at me and say, well, why did you put that? As the activities director, I'm watching our students all the time. It doesn't, and again, it doesn't matter if it's K through 12. I'm looking at them to find something. And to me, we'll talk about grit, and I'll talk to every student that I've ever talked to. You have to have the courage to want to say, this is what I want to do. We all know it. There are so many kids right now, and I watch the statistics, and I'm in those meetings. And when I see a student in the hallway and they say, oh, I'm not doing well in math, I said, well, why aren't you doing math? Well, I don't need to know math. And I said, well, you have to have the courage to learn math. You have to try it. No difference than walking down the hallways and throwing out my very limited Spanish and saying, and they say, oh, Miss Lindstedt, why would you even remember that? And again, it's the courage and the challenge to get into it, get involved. So they need to see that their success, and then it always falls back to, you have the potential, you just need to drive it. Conscientious is defined as the personality trait of being thorough, careful, and vigilant. And again, and working with students and trying to find out what they want to do. And when I talk about the grit, that's not just, again, in activities. We need more grit on the playing field or in the basketball court and whatnot. I've bumped into a lot of high school students that I think, aren't really looking at their success and what their success could be on the court, on a baseball field, and our track team. We're really excited about our one student getting the scholarship and going to Holy Cross. There hasn't been a lot of that talk that they could get scholarships. And again, I'll talk a little bit about that, but they're not staying with it and thinking long-term. Yesterday, there was an unbelievable career fair here. And I hope those are the kind of things that start to get kids to think about, I could do this. I want to do this. I could be a student athlete at the college level, and we'll go back to it. We'll talk about Nintendo. I could get a scholarship for being part of esports. And I digress, or I'll go fast ahead of myself, that New England College in Henniker, right down the street, is one of the top 20 schools of giving scholarships for gaming. Yes, it's called esports, but it's gaming, and it's really a huge thing. So perseverance falls under the grit, the resilience, and the passion. And I know that that's always been a part of our school district and our mission. Hence why grit kind of fits for me and what we're trying to do within activities and athletics. One of the really good things that we did this year, I'll show you in the numbers we didn't, but I'm really pushing for, and we upgraded our family ID. And family ID, pretty much just like David Frazier was talking about, is going to allow us to start to follow the data a little bit more. Watching kind of what's going on, what kids are registering for. Are they two-sport athletes, but also into clubs and activities, and how we can do that and how we can get everything to fall into place. When I first started, we put it in, it wasn't as successful. During COVID, it was really not, because of so many clubs being online and those kind of things. Everybody wasn't really sure why they would be registering. So that's kind of one of those things. And this year we've really pushed it. The only thing is we've only really had it here at the middle school and the high school. And I think for our whole district, eventually that will be something that will be easier. I run a lot of clubs right now using Google Forms and those kind of things. I think I'm technically this spring driving the secretaries crazy at JGS and RMS. And I think if, like everything with communication within the district, if we had one-stop shopping, here it is, I can register for everything on one platform. I think it would just streamline everything. And if you start registering for clubs and activities for your kindergartner, you'll know what you're doing by the time they're seniors, and it'll be there, and it can generate the data that we need for, like I said, for clubs and activities. The other benefits are, it is the ease for our coaches and our advisors. They can either look on their laptops if they're an advisor, they can look on their phones if they're out on the field, in the swimming pool, those kind of things. You can know that, and we've already started it. It gives the attendance for the day if the student athlete or the person involved in clubs was even in school, right? So if they were absent or not, it's there. It also has been helpful, hopefully the pandemic moves along, but it was helpful with COVID and being able to approve and not approve students so that people and the coaches knew. So coaches go to practice, they want to know who's supposed to be there. That's also a safety thing. They can look at that and say, this student was in class, they were here, but how come they haven't shown up at the field or into the gym? And they can look at the safety of that. And it's the same thing for club advisors. This kid was in class, was in school today. Why aren't they here at clubs? And they can call home and be like, hey, are they here? And again, it will just streamline things for everybody so we know where we're at. And as I said, another benefit, I'd like to use it for better data collection of what we're doing, what our students are doing. The setbacks are, I still do paper copies because I never want a student not to be able to do a club. They can't do sports because they have to have their physical, and we need all kinds of contact information through Family ID. But we can do a paper copy if they're just in a club. It still does have the access to emergency contacts if they have any allergies and whatnot. So the paper is okay. It's not as streamlined for a club, for a coach or an advisor. Again, so in establishing clubs using the registration platform of Family ID, that has been kind of a thing. Student government never really uses it. Interact has their own little thing, class representatives. So those are a little bit of setbacks. Even with the numbers that I'm going to show you, our numbers are probably even higher. It's just that we haven't been able to get them to register, just because they're so used to not registering. Like nobody thinks Interact really has to have, kind of formal registration. Again, with their advisor, they do the paperwork and those kind of things, but it would make everything set. Deleting of registrations. That's another one. Goes kind of to the top, back to parents and guardians. They register for the wrong thing. The only problem is once it's in there, and I will work with Family ID to try to figure out, you just really can't get rid of that registration. It's just, they're deleted from the club or the sport, but it stays in there and it changes numbers. Sometimes it won't go away. So that's kind of a setback in looking at numbers and data. So again, the future data collections, the goals would be getting it as a district, attendance, what we're doing season by season, grades based on after school participation. Is it really working? Is having the investment in what we do with sports and activities, is it making the difference for our students, grade based, and how they're doing? And it also will drive what our offerings are, though, in matching up where we're having students in success. Class registrations, I'll kind of go over that because that's an interesting one for me. We used to cut at the middle school, which when I got here, we got put in the no cut policy. That's an interesting one for anybody looking at it. Are we getting these students the passion that they really love? And again, my goal is to put in some of the sports at the elementary level. And are they carrying now? And they stay with it. And do they have that grit? They stay with it. It's a little more challenging at the middle school. Do they have that grit? And they just love to play. And even if they get to the high school and they don't make varsity, do they still love to play? Did we do that for them? Did they find their way? A lot of people understand it too. Do sports just keep you towing the line, right? It keeps you safe. It keeps you going. It makes sure you get the great grades, those kind of things. I mean, that is another reason why colleges and universities have invested so much money in intramural sports and rec centers and those kind of things, because they know that healthy mind of just being active. So that will be interesting to watch as, again, there was some, when they had the cut policies, we have some teams where we have really low numbers in certain grades. And why is that? Was there no students in those grades that ever wanted to play sports or be involved in activities? I don't think so. I do think that it has to do with, if you cut them, they're not coming back and they're not staying with it the next year. But it will help in those kind of things. Why will it also help? If I know at middle school, or at the elementary level, and that animation, which has been very popular at the elementary, what do we need budgetarily for hey, all these kids are coming, they're coming to the middle school. What more can we do for them to upgrade the animation? It would also help the principal of the school say, maybe there's a class that we have to add, a class during the school day, which would impact obviously the art teachers and those kind of things. And how do we watch those trends? So that's a big thing, that watching from K all the way to 12 and how we're doing. And again, planning, budgeting for future seasons. I mean, that's a big thing. In what we're doing. The development, just getting the words out, especially activities. When I first got here, we were able to do the club fairs. And so I'll talk again about the Nintendo thing. As soon as I had that very first club fair, I had the 3 students climb to the 3rd floor of JRMS, huffing and puffing, and said, "You said we can have any club we want." And I said, "Yes, if within reason we can do it, we'll do it." And they said, "We love Nintendo. We want to compete. We want to play. This is our passion." I said, "Okay." And that's where really the first rules for every club came from. Can you find yourselves an advisor? Is there a teacher, an administrator, somebody that wants to oversee it? Can you recruit? Can you recruit students so that they want to be here, they want to do it? I can't have a club of 3 just hanging out and playing. Is it going to be? And what are the guidelines for it? What are we going to be learning? And they all did have the same thing. And we started talking about the esports and being able to play. They wanted to be in cyber securities and different things. And they say if you're a gamer, you're a better aviator than a current pilot. So yeah, those are the stats that are out there. And so if it's going to broaden their horizons and what they're trying to do in their future, that's us listening to their student voice and coming from there. The student voice, again, it's an application process. It is, and again, my new little club, which is gymnastics / tumbling, which will clearly help our numbers with cheer. They're all 6th graders, and they're maybe it's, maybe they figured out who I am in April, but they're using their student voice. They had the plan. They already knew that they had to recruit 5 or 6 students. We've talked a little bit about it. They're coming back next week with their ideas. And then the sustainability and the safety of putting in clubs. Do I get young boys that think that we should have a boxing ring and those kind of things? And I say, well, I don't think I can do that. So there are ideas and things, but at least they're coming with their thoughts and processes. Needs based on discussions, culture, environment, and trends. I mean, that is what it is, right? What can we do for our students that are changing and developing all the time? What is the latest and greatest, if we can keep them here? Again, photography has been huge. Animation has been big. There seems to be a new trend with anime coming back and those kind of things. I mean, we've got to really push the arts. This whole district is really into it. I need to do more coordination with the elementary schools. We've got some great programming. But that's more of a coordination with the principals and myself of coming up with different solutions and different ideas. I'll show you what I've put in the spring. And when we get down there a little bit, just an overview of athletics and the registrations. So again, if you look at the numbers, and that's why I put it in 2018 and 2019, I don't feel like our numbers should change too dramatically because of COVID, but they did. Again, people taking things out and those kind of things. But our numbers, again, coming back, you can see that with girls soccer right this year, the boys soccer program, field hockey it's an amazing thing with field hockey. We did in 2019, we started a program, and I'll talk more about that. That is one of our goals, is to, we did have a little clinic. RMS students, JGS students came, and those things are really valuable for a sport like field hockey, because we're just not going to have youth programs playing field hockey. But if our upperclassmen, our high school students can go down and mentor. It was a really big plus. They were really excited about it. And we had it here so that they knew what was going on, and even all the coaches could be a part of it. So that was a Wednesday afternoon kind of club thing. And certainly we need to do more of those kind of things. Cross country is in good shape. Golf is going up. Girls volleyball, it's here now because we have a varsity sport. We'll play our first year of varsity this in the fall. This year we played a JV schedule. The girls volleyball again came from 3 young ladies who said, we love volleyball. We want to have a volleyball program. And I said, okay, I don't think we can get the numbers in just girls volleyball. We made it co-ed. We made it co-ed, JRMS and CHS. So again, it wasn't, I have it here as not offered. And then I'll bring you down to the club stats. And just so you know that that's where it was. So 2019 and 20, we just had a club. 2020 and 21, if there was a benefit to COVID, there was. We got to play some JV games because we were doing all that regional stuff. And so people just needed to play. Did our coach take a hit? Yes, because we didn't even have uniforms and the referees would yell at her that, you know, she had to have her uniforms. And she's like, this is a scrimmage. Like, what are you doing? So it was good. It was good for us. And obviously this year's numbers, we had success and we'll have more success next year in those kind of things. Again, the basketball is unified indoor track. Indoor track, for the numbers to stay where they are, for the last 2 years, we have been supporting it because it's important. But because of COVID, they haven't had really an indoor track season because we haven't been able to use the colleges and universities for events. So that's held them back. Other boys hockey, I'll talk briefly about that. Boys hockey is a co-op with Conval. The co-op has changed. We as a school, the CONET, we have pushed the envelope, and we'll continue to push the envelope with the NHIA to make sure that we have a place to play next year. Hopefully there's a decision soon. I was the only athletic director to go to the NHIA and sit there and make sure that they understood that they can't take away an opportunity for students to play. They're a governing body that has to create opportunities, and that's what they're supposed to do. So we hope that can resolve. Swim, something that we have to work on because of COVID, that took away the swimming pools and whatnot. So, and then as you look down, phenomenal numbers, even after COVID this year. We do sponsor now a JV baseball team and a JV softball program. We're working on that. Our track program is back to taking off again. Again, the tennis is a problem for the boys, and our girls tennis is moving in the right direction. And then these are the numbers. As you look across, again, I will tell you in 2021, we did not use family ID. It was more paper things, advisors. These are the clubs that we definitely had. But it's a little bit tougher to gather the numbers as compared now to when we have family ID. Keep in mind, not everyone is you'll see it, it'll come up with like chess. Chess has been a combo. So we did start chess with CHS and JRMS, and now the numbers have changed. Chess now, we've hosted our own chess tournaments. We have students attending state tournaments. So that's really made a big difference. I will tell you where the chess came. I'll talk about a leadership program that we called Orioles Outreach. But the chess really took off when we were doing the Orioles Outreach, which is our upperclassmen hosting 9th graders and being mentors for them. The chess club was the biggest thing. They did it during office hours or the mentoring period. And there had to have been 12 to 14 students show up, 9th graders, just 9th graders. And with student leaders, the upperclassmen that knew nothing about chess, but they were asked like, hey, can you host chess? And so, you know, even students were listening to students with student voice, and that's really where that came from. But now we have a chess club that, you know, pretty much is JRMS and the high school, and going from there. Again, there's kind of our numbers with the other things, as I was saying about Nintendo moving from 14, for the high school, now it's esports. So in 2021, it was a combo, and now it's into esports for our numbers. The Orioles outreach, like I said, I've just kind of mentioned it. I'll go over that in a little bit. Photography has become a big deal. And then again, the volleyball numbers you can see, but what transpired is we now have a varsity team. Again, here's JRMS. So you see the very big numbers in 2018 and 2019. The only problem with those numbers, besides track, is all of those teams were cutting. So out of 27, they probably are only keeping maybe 20. If I go by uniforms, they were definitely only keeping 18 to 20, because that's the amount of uniforms that we had. So I would say that was the thing. That has been one of those things that I know we talk about budgeting and looking at the future. We're working on those and making sure that everybody has a uniform in what we're doing, because we don't have cuts. If you look at the basketball numbers of this year, girls basketball, boys basketball, they actually even played 2 separate schedules this year. We had a B schedule and an A schedule, and that's going to just keep growing. I will talk to you a little bit. Again, people say, well, why are you doing this, Heather? Your B team for the boys and the girls, they came to me and said, we don't want to stop playing. They now have the Pratt on Mondays after school, and they go every Monday. And that's all the time I can give them in the Pratt, but those are the B athletes on that team that really love it and want a place to be. And I think that they know they have potential if they can get out there and play, and they can be with their friends and those kind of things. It's made a big difference for them. And as I say that, JRMS volleyball, the season was supposed to end in the fall, and they all came to me and said, Miss Lindstad, can't we keep playing all year? Like, we don't really have a season, it's a club, can we do it? So they come every Thursday, they're in the Pratt, and they've done it all year long too. They just love playing the sport. They want to be a part of it, and our numbers are really good for volleyball in our future. And I will say it's still co-ed at JRMS, and word is spreading, because now we've gone from 1 boy to, I think we have 4 or 5 on a fairly regular basis now. So that's kind of where they are. And then there's the clubs again for our middle schoolers. Clubs are great, and so then you can see the co-ed volleyball. Some of the numbers have changed because they've moved up to the high school, but those are just, again, numbers of where we're at, what's happening and where we're at. I do a lot of, so you know, the flag football, those are just seasonal kind of things. We try to change it up with what we're doing in providing opportunities and going forward. And you can see there's just new Lab Girls is a new program this year. So there's different ones. Some are sustainable. You see the Nintendo and how popular that is and where we're going. Again, the kind of the tennis thing, where that was at, COVID, those kind of thing, and trying to sustain numbers. Winter running club has always been big, and again, it's just keeping kids active. This is kind of what I was getting at, overview of kind of what I put in. We had a few fall opportunities, but these are the numbers, and again, I need to work with the principals in what's going on. If everybody can look at spring B active K through 2, yes, that is a true number. We host a club of 50 kindergartners through 2nd grade. And yes, right now the sun doesn't always shine, so we've been in the JGS gym. And they love it because they need to be active. They're trying to find their way, and or they're just trying to find friends and those kind of things. So our numbers are great with what we're doing right now, and we just need to keep going with that. The one thing though I do have a problem with is trying to find the right advisors. We have a great animation storytelling program that we purchased through a grant called Fable Vision, and I just have not been able to get the teachers to be advisors. Even during COVID, I used some of our former students that didn't go away for college to do it online and those kind of things. So we just need to try to find more advisors that are willing to do it. However, I'm working on that because with all of these things, and I've always had kind of a partnership, go back, I've always had, or I'll go forward, partnership with Franklin Pierce since I've been here and in bringing them in. We've got them to come over, be volunteers. Some of the students, especially at JGS, request that the big kids be at their club. So we have those kind of things. And we're also getting kids from our high school, from Interact, National Honor Society to volunteer and work with the young kids too. So that's a key thing. With that animation grant though, animation, and why I'd like to get it at the elementary, because it's been so popular at JRMS and now it's at the high school. With the grant too, we've been able to purchase laptops and tablets for the elementaries and tablets so that they can use the computer lab here. And the tablets are great with the stylus pens and stuff like that. And they're really being as creative as they can be. They're very happy. Again, what do the numbers tell us? I guess I've already kind of talked to you about the Nintendo and just different trends, things that we've done. That, like I said, about the animation, the no cut policy. It's just, if it doesn't, it's just not all about the numbers. They just, the sense of belonging. I find time when I can, and I did. I was the B coach for the boys and the girls on games. I did find somebody else to help coach. We got beat 73-10 in a wonderful game where the coach was, even of the other team, trying to call a timeout on a tie ball because he wanted possession. And I looked, and I think at that time it was 65-5. And I was a little stunned, and I looked back, and I didn't look back at him. I looked back at my team, and they did not care. They just wanted to play. I don't think they identified score. It was an opportunity to represent JRMS, wear the uniform, and play a game that they truly love. They love it. They don't need to be the best at it right now. Hopefully they find it. If they don't, I think they'll play for the rest of their lives too. I think those are the kind of things that we have to remember, that everybody should love to play and going forward with that. So again, I've talked about it. We do need more advisors. We need some teachers to talk with that. But if not, we have the creation with the district working with Franklin Pierce. I created that for myself with the student athletes. They have been terrific. They get credit hours. And again, the Conant High School volunteers have been terrific too. Again, the pandemic, I can't give you the true numbers, but it has stunted or canceled some things. But I also think it's inspired growth in new program. So this is a different thing, but it's the same thing. Student voice, leadership, making sure that our transitions, everybody has talked about it. I researched it. I also had a nephew that was part of it at a different school district. So we were all set with grant money to go in the spring of 2020. However, COVID canceled it and we weren't able to do it. But it was something that I think, in speaking to the principal, Mr. Dustin, I guess, it's something that we really need is to make sure that students are actually controlling the environment here and finding that there can be student leaders in those kind of things. So we did the student training just this past April. But what we did create in the first place, and actually Kim was part of it too, and I had asked you back when you did the Cardinal Mentoring Club. So I've always felt that it was a positive. It has been. We called it the Orioles Outreach because we couldn't call it Link Crew because we couldn't steal it since we hadn't gone to the training. But we called it the Orioles Outreach Squad. We've hosted the last 2 years. Last year, it was an amazing event to train the juniors and seniors that signed up. It is an application process, so they are being evaluated. But we trained them for 2 half-day sessions, and then they led the freshman orientation. But I think one of the biggest things was watching their faces when they knew that they had to call. And so we had upperclassmen make a call to every single freshman that was coming to orientate, to invite them to orientation. And we want that to be that hey, I'm here for you. I'm in the hallways. You know, we're not going to let you go. We'll find something. We'll find a club, join a team, join, you know, be ready to do these things. And so that is what this student leadership thing is going to be about. And we'll also going to do it for the 8th graders. We will have an 8th grade leadership program that will bring in those 6th graders, and theirs is called Web, which is where everyone belongs. And we're going to start that process with the recruiting for both schools coming up in May. And we'll do the orientations and all those kind of things. There are other leadership things that I have done now with the athletes. I've started a monthly, just student athletes. They need to have their voice. They need to tell us what's going on the field, on the court, but they need to talk to each other too, and find out what's positive, what's working at these teams and those things. I mean, that's the only thing that can make us better. And I think that that's one of the reasons why I showed the first picture of like just our seniors from the track team and the basketball teams. We all need to be in this together to try to make sure that Conant is represented the way they want to represent Conant. And no different. I don't have a leadership group right now as far as student athletes, and I could probably add that for JRMS, but right now that's kind of our things and what we're doing in that respect. So our next steps, again, I've got to be the strongest communicator of what's happening and how to implement different things that I know that will work and will help students by listening to student voice. But again, at the elementary level, there are a lot of different things that we should still be implementing. And we've got to build that up for our K through 5. Recruitment of advisors, that's on me to continue to do that. New opportunities, data collection, again, as I've gone through it, create the environment, gritty student leadership. And the other thing that we'd like to do is more community service opportunities for athletics. There's always those kind of things that, again, I just believe in it, in giving back and raising funds for something other than ourselves and finding that way to give back. Because in truth, I'm here to help our students, especially at the high school, build their resume as best they can. And those are things that we can do that you put on your college application that gets you seen and recognized. And it doesn't matter if they're not going to college, it's a resume builder too, if you're just going out in the workforce, that you've given back and that you're there representing, again, something bigger than ourselves and giving back in that respect. So those are the kind of the next steps for what I see for activities in athletics. And there's some of the, and I ask for questions.
Great. I have a question.
Great.
How many people are on the Oriole outreach team?
23 students this year. Yep. Juniors and seniors.
Where does the swim team meet?
We are at the Clark out in Winchendon, and that was the reason why we didn't have that year of swimming. They couldn't do like what indoor track did. They did some stuff in the school. We did put in the great weight room. That's why indoor track really has had success. But during the COVID, we were trying to go over to Winchendon. We couldn't go into Massachusetts and swim, but that is where the swim team is. Yep. And our coach is their coordinator at the club.
Okay.
So we get the pool.
Not a question, but kind of a comment that goes with the passion. So I have a second grader at JGS, and last year they did the Fable Vision bookmaking.
Yep.
And this year it was animation. And she came home with the permission slip and she didn't even finish reading the rest of it. All she saw was Fable Vision. Mommy, I want to do this club. Do you even know what it is? No, but it's Fable Vision. That was fun. Okay.
Yep.
And all she knew was that one word, but it stuck with her from last year. And she's like, I want to do this. This was really fun. And I was like, I don't think you're making a book like you did last year.
But there's storytelling. Yep.
So, okay. So she's in Fable Vision.
again, and I'd like to grow that program, and we really, and hopefully, again, it came from the JRMS students. Ms. Lynn said, we need to have tablets. Like, we're getting really good at this, and they were trying to use their phones and do flipper clip and this, that, and the other thing, and they were like, this is just not working. And so we've been able to get the grant money, and bolster it, and I think it is great for the littles too.
Yeah.
And they're excited about it. So thank you.
And then she pulls up her computer at home and she's like, watch, I can do this and this and this. And I'm like, I don't even know how to do that. How did you do that? She's like, I learned it on Fablevision. Of course you did.
Yes, I will tell you, again, it's who you know too. That came as one of those things that the students asked me about animation, and Fablevision is Peter Reynolds from the Dot, and Peter Reynolds is a graduate of the same high school that I graduated. So there was a connection, and I heard animation, and they might get a guess because we also have a person that's in animation. His name is Lance Wilder, and he's been with The Simpsons for about 31 years, so something like that. So I do try to bring whatever, like I said, it comes from the students, but if I have a connection and those kind of things, then I can find a way things. And like I said, the Link Crew thing, that was listening to my nephew, what he was doing, and me saying that's a program that every high school should have, you know, and it really, I'm really excited about implementing it and moving it forward. I know Laura Harding is very excited about being the lead for the web for JRMS, and go from there. Anything else?
I think you're doing great.
No, this one I do
And I
understand.
can't wait to, I
This
can't
one
wait
I'm well
to
versed
see
in.
the Pratt set up with all your gymnastic equipment.
I told them, I said, we're just
I do.
using mats, right? I said, no bars, no anything. They're like, yeah, we just want to tumble. I said, okay. If you call
Pommel
that,
horse?
if they call that gymnastics, then I call it gymnastics, right?
Yep.
And I will tell you, we're gonna move forward it. Our cheer coach has Mondays off, and she's willing to come in and be the advisor on Mondays. So I've already got an advisor ready to do it. So hopefully it will increase their numbers, and we can have cheer back. JRMS, we're just gonna get it going.
So would you happen to know off the top of your head what % participation you have year round?
With sports and activities,
Mhm.
so probably, does that mean single people though, that they're not doing two? That's the only thing I would have to separate with data, and that's one of those things. Like, so if a kid is a 3-sport athlete, can I only count them once? I guess would be. the
I
thing.
would be looking at
So-
from the perspective of,
So we're probably definitely like what I just showed you with numbers just for JGS. I know, like, just that spring stuff that I'm doing, 50 helps my numbers, but we're just around 33, 35% with just JGS right now with that. So I would have to say that JRMS and CHS, we're probably at about 40%, 43. But again, that's cheating in a little bit that maybe I have 3-sport athletes. So that's why I was asking you that.
no, that's what I was looking at
Yeah.
was,
So I can get you those numbers, but I will look at it.
if you were to look at the, break it up into, fall, winter, spring. And you could
So-
say, in the fall, I've got about X % of people involved with
So,
clubs and that.
so in the
and-
fall, we had 151 just student athletes. So out of 400, so where am I at? 151 and 400. And that's
'Cause,
just,
I mean, there's a
and that was
limit.
just, and that was just athletics. And so, yeah, so that, so that was 30%, right? Or in around, or 25%, and then all my clubs. So
Probably another 100 doing clubs.
in 100, yeah. So yes, we knocked that out of the park.
Because there's a limit. You've only got so many students, and of those so many students, you've only got so many who can participate. So-
Well, and I think that those, David and I have talked, there's some athletes that I really would have liked to have sat down, and we really need to push it. I've got to work with Kim Baker, and if a student has a path, certain kids we need to, I don't think it's going to take away from what they're doing athletically. They just need to get a little grit and say, you know what, 2 days a week, even if I don't go to the robotic matches on Saturday because I have a track meet, I'm doing it for an hour or 2 hours a week.
Mhm.
They really need to do that and add to their academics too. So that is something that's a collaboration that we have to get going. And the way schedules are, but I don't even, we've got great coaches. They're not gonna be a problem from 2:30 to 3:45 if somebody stays for robotics and then goes on to practice and whatnot. So that is one of those really building their resumes and making sure that they're getting everything that they can. They don't have to be excellent at it. They have to understand if that's really what they want though, or they don't. I mean,
Well,
that's
I don't
the,
think they're gonna be staying after school if it's not something that they want to do. So,
well, right.
so that's why I was interested in what the participation rate
Yeah.
was.
So I'll show you, but
Because that's a high number. Really,
Oh.
you're talking 40–50%. That's really a high number.
Just to give you a
Yes.
little anecdote that sort of supports this, we have a lot of ninth graders who stayed after school without a purpose. They don't want to go home.
Yeah.
They're down in the lobby here. They're upstairs in the second floor of the high school looking for a teacher who can have them stay after and stay with them. So and some of these are learners, when you look at the MTSSB, sort of tiers of support, several of these I would put in the tier 2 to tier 3 level of daytime sort of needs for support. And because we have Heather, who's so pliable and flexible with what activities she can support, she's developed some activities that have pulled these learners in. Photography club actually came from that. There was interest from some of these roving packs of ninth graders who didn't want to leave the building. There was teacher interest, and Heather was able to find some funding. And now these learners run around with cameras after school, snapping photos that we put in our bird's nest that are going into some of the newsletters that our team is putting out. So that's an example of how the participation numbers grow like that. There are literally learners who do not want to leave the school building. It's their safe place. They may not be the best students, but this engages them and keeps them here in a positive way. And I think I would say probably 10% or so of the numbers of new participants have been exactly that type of learner who just wants something positive to spend their time with doing here. And I don't have a firm number for that right now because again, Family ID is still not super reliable.
Correct.
I looked at the number of 5 for digital photography. I think it's 3 times that much.
Correct.
Just from me watching the learners who are here doing that club every week. But as we develop more of that data, I know one of our goals is going to be to overlay some of the attendance, discipline, and grade data with some of the participation data and see what trends we can sort of see there over time. But
in the photography thing, my first reaction was, well, we have yearbook. That's not what I want. I said, okay, well, I will find you an advisor, or you can help me find an advisor. And there was one young lady that was really passionate about it, who's led the show. And I said, do you just, Miss Lindsay, I think I've got it. And I said, I think we do. I think we can build it. And so that is how we try to find things. And I think the only problem with that is we don't really have student voice, and we won't at the elementary. And so that's me working with ideas and stuff like that with the principals and saying, I think these are the things. And that's one of the transitions things we did. We're doing the fun run. Nobody should say running is fun, but I'm old, so that's okay. I took our cross-country coach for JRMS. He is the coach running it at JGS and RMS. And one of the reasons for that, Charlie, is those 5th graders, when they get here in the fall, they could probably just join cross-country. They're going to feel a sense of belonging because they know the coach, and they'll just be here. Now, I did want to try to do more here so that JGS and RMS could get here, but in talking to the principals, and I agree, it's hard to, would I be limiting how many kids could do the thing if they couldn't get the transportation here?
Right.
So we're doing it separate right now. But he's already on it. We are probably going to find a date though for JGS and RMS to have a mini meet here. So we are going to do those things, but it really is about the transition too, that they can come here and be like, oh, I was on the fun run club. I can be a part of this. And that's hopefully the goal from the elementary up when they can hear and we continue with transition.
I bet if you ask the fifth graders, they'd have pretty good opinions on what they would want for some clubs.
Yeah,
But they
Yep.
would definitely, I know Lego Club is something
right.
there's so many things that they would love.
Well,
to do.
robotics actually came from Chris Radcliffe the first year of
Mhm.
doing Legos at RMS.
Mhm.
And my being there and speaking to the guy, and that's how we did start robotics, because they had other programs for it. So,
Yeah.
yep. Again, it is just about finding advisors though too.
Yeah, I know.
But with Lego Club, in truth, if that's it, I'm sure I can find a Franklin Pierce
Mm.
student that can run Lego Club. Yep. So
Teacher
that,
did it and only took a few kids this time and that was
Huh?
tough. A teacher did it this year down in the grade school,
yeah,
but just offered it and then only took very, very limited kids.
yeah.
Probably supply.
Well, or fear. I mean, there's me. I'm like, oh yeah. They're like, Heather, should we cut it off? I'm like, I think we should cut it at 50. So I thought, okay, we'll cut it at 50. So anyways, so thank you. If there's any other questions, obviously, let me know in the future or whatnot, and we'll go from there. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Where we at on the agenda, Nick?
Or toward the end, just matters and future items.
So do we have any committee matters?
I do not have any committee matters.
I have committee matters.
What are those?
Now that we have our first meeting, we should do some organization. So who would like to be the education committee leader from the school board?
What does it entail? Like
Well, it entails
Reading this?
working, it entails working with David on an agenda, okay, and then managing the meeting. Because David is a observer, I guess.
The administrative liaison, I think is
All right,
my actual role.
so he's the administrative leader, so
I mean, essentially, you'd be the chair of this committee. So,
basically what happens is when we have the committee reports, you report out at the school board on what's transpired at the committee. And if there are any questions there, you can take the questions back to the committee, that kind of stuff. For this committee, you don't have to worry about minutes because Nick has taken them all. And you don't have to worry about scheduling because David schedules it and Nick posts it. So all of that stuff is taken care of. It's just a matter of leading the discussion and working with David on the agenda.
Usually we just email about the agenda unless there's a reason to meet and talk about something more in detail at that time. But most of the time it's just, here's what I think we can pull together for presentations. Is it something the board would be interested in? Yep, sounds good. Or why don't we go back and look at this instead? And sort of go from there. And then I communicate with the presenters and make sure they're ready to go.
Mhm.
Stuff like that.
Sure. Everybody's looking at me like, okay, yes.
So you volunteered, right?
I
Sam?
volunteer.
You didn't get pushed into anything.
Not at all.
All right.
No, I feel no pressure.
So Monday, when the report out comes, you can just basically tell them what we covered in the meeting today.
Okay.
Okay.
Sounds great.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So the agenda, will it then be emailed to all of us beforehand?
Typically Nick puts it into this format.
Yeah, that'll have a location and.
yeah, I was a little late on it.
Well,
Comparatively
walking in, we're
speaking,
like, do
yeah.
you know what we're doing? No, do you know?
No, I mean, it's, so if you go, if I ever forget or it's not there, sent to you, you go to school board, we have a separate committee tab, and then you just go here. And then you'll have the ones that are sent to me.
Okay,
So,
What Kim and I can do, if Kim's okay with it too, is once we've agreed on the agenda items, I don't mind just sending them to the preview ahead of time anyway, so that then when, if Nick forgets or whatever, then it's gone out. And whatever.
That-
Okay.
Of course. Yeah, that's great. Always open is the best. Let everybody know anything. That's good. Okay, I like it.
With that, I will turn the agenda over to you.
So number 6, we have an adjournment. Do we have to make a motion or anything like that? Or are we just
We-
good to adjourn?
we haven't in the past, but I think it would be better to just procedurally do it.
Okay, does anybody want to make a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion that we adjourn the education meeting.
Second.
Thank you. All right.
All right. Thanks, David. Thank you, Nick.